Hi, everyone. So I'm going through Rolling Stone's 500 greatest albums of all time, according to them. And it's kind of strange to try and rank these albums when they're all kinds of different genres, but it's still fun to look through the list. And so I'm doing them 100 albums at a time. And so this is the second video doing 400 to 301, and I'm just going to talk about the albums and which ones I've heard, which ones I have, which ones I don't know a thing about. So, 400. Yes, I remember when this came out. One of the first girl bands. I think the first girl band with the #1 album, I believe. I could be wrong. But I really enjoyed the album. Very talented band. I had never heard this album until a few months ago, maybe 3 months ago. I had a Patreon request from Pal, one of my Patreons, and so I listened to this all the way through. I think I gave it at least an A minus, or a B plus, probably an A minus. For a first listen, I really did enjoy it. I've never heard the Raincoats. Billie Eilish, I did hear this album a couple of years ago, and I liked it, but that's about it. Todd Rundgren, Something Anything. What I love about Todd the most is he helped Sparks, one of my favorite bands, start their career. And he produced their first album. And I've heard bits and pieces of his albums. So I've probably heard at least some of this album. Very talented. Definitely like a musical genius. Producer, great guitarist. Pretty good singer. Overall musician. Nope. Diana Ross, great talent. Never had that album. I've never owned any Taylor Swift. I've heard actually very little from her, but I know she's talented. I have heard some songs, but not enough for me to rush out and buy a Taylor Swift album. Yeah, the great Ike and Tina Turner. That would be nice to have. I do have their live album, What You Hear Is What You Get, which is excellent. Never heard of that artist. Pixies, the album after this, I believe, I did have at one point and really liked it. I don't have it now, though. No. Just say no. Yeah, Aretha Franklin. I've never owned any of her albums. Radiohead. I like their earlier albums. But I still enjoy, OK Computer and Kid A. And I've heard bits of In Rainbows, but I kind of just gave up on them. But a great band. Nope. Ramones' Rocket to Russia. Yes, I have that album. I have the first 3 Ramones albums. The Kinks, I have that album. One of the greats. One of the great 60s albums and bands. Massive Attack. Nope. Tame Impala. I've reviewed some of their songs on my Patreon, and I've reviewed a lot of songs on my Patreon, but from what I remember, I liked all of the songs I heard. Lynyrd Skynyrd, I've never heard the whole album, but of course, I've heard their hits and everything, and great Southern rock band. I was more into Black Oak, Arkansas, though, in the 70s. Charles Mingus, I've never really listened to. I might like that. Moving Pictures I owned on vinyl back in the day. Run DMC. Nope, never owned any Run DMC, but I always liked them. Yeah, yeah, yeahs. No, no, no's. Never heard it. Yeah, I've heard a lot about this album, Neutral Milk Hotel in the Aeroplane Over the Sea. I might have even heard bits of it, but I don't remember. Maybe for a good reason. Green Day, American Idiot, I bought that when it came out years ago, but not really a big Green Day fan. Robert Johnson, nope. You know, I know his whole history and story, but I've never owned any of his albums. The great Isaac Hayes, Hot Buttered Soul, never owned it. I've never owned any Janis Joplin. I've never owned anything by The Temptations. That would be a good anthology to have, though. Yeah, My Girl, I Can't Get Next to You, Cloud Nine, A Ball of Confusion. No. Mobe Deep. No. Yes, I have. George Harrison's All Things Must Pass. Although, you know, as much as I love this album, my favorite of his is 33 1/3. If you're reading this, it's too late. Drake. I've tried some Drake on Spotify, and it's just not my thing, man. Aerosmith Rocks, good album, but my favorite, you know, I did like early Aerosmith, and my favorite is Toys in the Attic, which I used to have on vinyl. I wouldn't mind it on CD, or even Rocks. Mad Villain, I've never even heard of. Talking Heads, I love Talking Heads, and I have that CD. My favorite, though, is Fear of Music. Parliament. They were always a fun band, but I never heard any of their full albums. Luther Vandross. Never heard. I've heard of him, of course, but never bought any of his albums. Never into my Chemical Romance. That's hard to say. But I did, once again, on Patreon, I did a couple of songs maybe a year ago or so, and they were really good. So I was impressed with the songs. Funkadelic, One Nation Under a Groove. Yeah, I mentioned Big Star before, and I've just never heard their full albums. And like I said, I did enjoy the documentary that was on Netflix 3 or 4 years ago. I've heard her, Olivia Rodrigo. Once again, on Patreon, I had a couple of song requests, and I was impressed with her. Yeah. Check out my Patreon and make a song request or even a full album request. Tom Waits, I've heard this album. Once again, I think it was a Patreon full album review on Patreon, the earlier Patreon that I had. And I really liked it. Yeah. I've just never owned any of his albums. But, you know, I love Randy Newman, and I think I could easily get into Tom Waits. Yeah, I don't know why it's doing that, but I heard this album in a recent CD exchange, and I really did not care for it. Black Sabbath, that is a classic, and I own all of the Ozzy era albums on CD and a couple of box sets. Yeah. X-Ray Specs, I've never heard their albums. The Cars, I used to have The Cars, also on vinyl. Great band. Eminem. I did own a couple of Eminem albums. I think the one after this, Encore, was one of them. And some of it I really did like. SZA? Nope. Load more. Stevie Wonder, the only album of his that I owned on vinyl back in the day was Songs in the Key of Life, which was excellent. Great, great talent, as everybody knows. Yeah, I did no, I didn't. I did a review on Patreon for their, the following, I think the studio album, the next album, which was okay except for the production. But, and I've heard bits of Kick Out the Jams, but wasn't really that impressed with it. The studio album was better. Gillian Welch, I've never heard. GZA, never heard. Arctic Monkeys, I think I did a song review maybe at some point, but I don't remember. Because, like I said, I've done so many reactions. I never owned the first two Bruce Springsteen albums, but my favorite is Tunnel of Love, and of course, Born to Run is great. Never owned any reggae albums, but I don't mind that genre. Yes. I have like a 2-disc greatest hits of Sly and the Family Stone. It's got a lot of songs on it. They also have their studio album Life. Love Sly and the Family Stone. Yeah, I think I own this album and the box set for it. I think that's too low though, especially it being the Beatles. Yes, that this was gifted to me. I really enjoy it. The Smashing Pumpkins. Snoop Doggy Dogg. You gotta love Snoop Doggy Dogg, although I've never owned any of his albums. Well, I did actually own this, believe it or not, on vinyl, because I used to disc jockey in the 70s and 80s, and yep, I bought it. It was a pretty good album. I've never owned any Eno albums, even though I do like some of what I've heard. Boom, Dylan. Yeah, I've heard it, but like I said, my favorite is Slow Train Coming. But I like a lot of Bob Dylan music. Roxy Music, Avalon I have. Very good album. My favorite of theirs is their debut, though. The Basement Tapes is pretty good with the band. I used to own Santana. I used to own the first 3 Santana albums. I really liked them, but, I would never play them, so I'd end up trading them in. But still, great albums. Bill Withers, never owned. I've owned Elvis Presley's greatest hits. That's about it. But for me, for a stage performer, he's the greatest stage performer. I used to own that on vinyl because I used to DJ, and I did like it back in the day. Not that I really would like it now. Burna Boy, I've never heard. DJ Shadow. Vampire Weekend. Yes, one of the greatest live albums ever. I have the deluxe version, and they do most of the songs from Tommy. And I had that on vinyl back in the day, in the early 70s. Great, great live album. I did own some Prince on vinyl, but not Dirty Mind or his earlier ones before Purple Rain. Yep. I like Jerry Lee Lewis. That would be good to have. All killer, no filler. Coldplay. I always used to think that they were kind of just like a weaker version of U2. And then later on, U2 was, I guess, trying to be Coldplay. Yes, I am a big fan of, I thought I had my box set here. I am a big fan of The Clash, and this is my favorite album by The Clash. Never owned it, but I totally respect Elvis Presley. Lana Del Rey. That's a strange album title and album cover. Weird. And I like weird, as you can see. X, I've heard a bit of X, and they're a very good band. The Stone Roses, yeah, I've heard bits of them. Just I wasn't into the Brit pop rock era very much at all. Janet Jackson, never owned that one. The Great Billie Holiday. I've seen a documentary on her, but never owned any of her albums. I have the Who Sell Out, the deluxe edition. Love it. Rosalia? Rosalia, is that how you pronounce it? Never heard it. Never heard of her. I've heard of her, but I've never heard her music. PJ Harvey, I've heard a little bit of her music, and I thought it was good. Solange. Yeah, Neil Young. See what I mean about the rankings? How can you rank, I don't know, like Janet Jackson, then you're ranking Neil Young? Just doesn't really make much sense. Why am I doing this video? But I love On the Beach. I love Neil Young. I love Wire. I have their first 3 albums. Yeah, I know people sometimes ask me about Joy Division, but, with what happened with the lead singer and everything, I don't know. It's just too depressing to listen to. But Love Will Tear Us Apart is a great song. Eno, yeah. I've heard little bits of some of early Eno, and I definitely think I would enjoy his early albums. Sam Cooke, never owned any. Al Green, never owned any. I used to have that on vinyl. I was a Kiss fan at some point. Early 70s. Gave up on them, I guess, after Destroyer. But, yeah. Bill Withers, nope. ABBA. Yeah, I respect ABBA. And they have some very catchy songs, but I've never owned any ABBA albums. Once again, Neil Young, Tonight's the Night. Love it. But how can you... I'm just saying, how can you rank an ABBA? And that's the thing too. It's not even a studio album. It's like a greatest hits. It's silly, Rolling Stone. And then you have Neil Young after ABBA. And then New York Dolls. I've heard some of their music, seen the documentary. Very interesting, but not enough for me to buy it. And that's it for 401 to, it's hard to keep track. 401, no, 401, whatever. Next will be the 300 to 201. There, that's easy. Thanks for watching. Please remember to subscribe, leave a comment below. I really do appreciate it, and like the video, unless you don't like it. Bye.